More Baltimore Ravens free agency news has surfaced, and it involves another tight end.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, the number one sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this Wednesday evening edition of the show, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. Again, we're twice per day now on Locked On Ravens. Still 5 days a week, but twice per day in the morning with our regular Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Time show, which is the bigger show. And then here into the evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday with our check-in. So thanks so much for being here. And thanks to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And we're going to talk about a lot on today's show as there is more free agency news that has emerged and people are starting to catch wind of on an article that we talked about yesterday, but I didn't have enough time to break down everything in that article. So we're going to bring it back and conclude that today. And then in the second part of the show, we're going to dive into Lamar Jackson questions being silenced by Declan Doyle at his press conference alongside Anthony Weaver and Anthony Levine Sr. So a lot to dive into today. Let's get into it. You know, this is a big deal. Ravens free agency. There are a lot of questions about just who could stay, who could go. We talked yesterday on the PM edition of the show. Maybe I just call Locked On Ravens PM. Right now, they're the check-ins we're going to see about Isaiah Likely, with Jeff Strubeck at The Athletic had to report about Likely alongside our Darius Washington. But there was another piece in there that I wanted to spend some more dedicated time on, and that is Charlie Kolar, who, again, a lot of people are like, hey, Isaiah Likely. Well, Charlie Kolar is somebody that could be in line, and I talked about this a little bit. I made a short yesterday on it. He could be in line for a sneaky payday, and that's something that Jeff hammered home here in this article where Charlie's, playing behind Andrews and Likely. There hasn't been a ton of opportunity for him to display his depth of talent, but Kolar's apparently, according to Jeff here, been identified by several people around the league as a guy who could get paid more in free agency than most think. We obviously know about Charlie and his blocking skills, but we did see him put his receiving chops on display at times this past season, and I think that a team we'll see that he has that potential to be a two-way guy. And again, not give him $10 million per season. Or I shouldn't say, never say never, right? But I look to the Josh Oliver deal that he got in Minnesota when he left Baltimore. 3 years, right around $23-ish million. So around $7-8 million per year. That was a couple years ago. So maybe you tack on $1 million for the cap increasing. Maybe Charlie gets anywhere from $7 to $9 million per season. I think that the thing with Charlie is that he is very valuable to what the Ravens do. But again, it's a new system with Declan Doyle, and there are going to be guys, not that Charlie can't play in the Declan Doyle system. I think he absolutely can. But I'm just saying, just in general, there are going to be guys that are going to be Jesse Minter and Declan Doyle guys. And there are going to be guys that aren't, but those guys that aren't, maybe they were John Harbaugh guys and Todd Monken guys. It's just going to be, it's a different, there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty here. My thing with Charlie has always been that it was going to be, in my opinion, Andrews and Kolar or Likely. Now, I don't know what Likely's market is at this point. I don't think that the injuries, like Jeff kind of talked about, we mentioned that yesterday, that might not affect his market a ton because people know what he can bring to the table when he's fully healthy. I know it was a weird season for him, but Kolar is somebody that I do think is important to re-sign. Again, I'm not necessarily breaking the bank for him and giving him $12 million per season or anything like that. But if you go into the year with Andrews, Kolar, and another tight end that you probably draft in the mid rounds, because that's where the Ravens have found their success and found their bread and butter. I mean, I think that does make a lot of sense. I think that for Kolar, I predict he does come back, because at this point, not that it's a choice between Likely and Kolar, but the choice was between Andrews and Likely. And so it's a conversation that everybody's talking about with Likely. I mean, that conversation we've already talked about. I don't have to dive into that. I think Likely is not coming back. But Kolar is that interesting one where what if a team does offer him $9 or $10 million per season, says, hey, Charlie, we really believe in you. We love your blocking skills. We want you to come in here and be our guy. Whereas in Baltimore, maybe they offer him $7 or $8 million, but it's not as big of a role. Maybe Charlie says, yeah, I'm going to follow the money and follow the role, which I would not blame him for one bit. then it puts Baltimore kind of back, not back to square one, but you're essentially going to have to rely on maybe two rookies at that point. Maybe a David Njoku makes sense if Charlie leaves. So there are a lot of moving parts and moving pieces right now that I feel like we just don't have enough information on. But I do agree with like the notion that I think Charlie's going to surprise some people with the deal that he ends up getting. And, it's going to be important for the Ravens to kind of identify backup plans within this, because things never go according to plan, right? That's kind of in the NFL where, you get certain things that do here and there, but in reality, there are going to be guys that the Ravens want to re-sign that all of a sudden the team comes in with this crazy offer and you're like, oh, we thought we could get this guy for X amount of money. And this team comes in and offers $4 million per year over that. And you're like, well, we can't do that. So now we got to pivot over. And there are, I think Njoku's a fine pivot option. There are some other guys that are okay pivot options as well. I think it'd be definitely disappointing to lose both Likely and Kolar and keep Andrews. I thought it was going to be Likely and Kolar and Andrews left. I thought that was what the plan was going to be, where once Andrews signed, it was Andrews and Kolar. But yeah, I mean, it's something where the Ravens are going to have to identify in terms of the parameters of the new offensive system, what is going to be warranted in terms of giving these guys money. Because if you pay a guy too much, and that's kind of the conversation with Likely, where if you go back to 2023 with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, yeah, it would have been great to retain both those guys. But in reality, they had other needs. Inside linebackers, not necessarily a premium position the way that others are. It's that same topic of conversation. So if if Kolar starts to enter Likely territory in terms of the money, well, then, you might have to go back to having Andrews and two new guys. But I definitely think Kolar is going to be a guy that surprises some people with the contract that he gets. Coming up, we'll talk about Lamar Jackson questions being silenced by Declan Doyle at his press conference on Wednesday. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. Is a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Wednesday PM edition, check-in edition of the show. We are here for you 5 days a week, twice a day on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Time is our big show, 3 segments here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We have the check-ins, the 2-segment shows, and alongside all our other content, like the bonus episodes on the weekends, the instant reaction shows, the watch-alongs, the squad show, which we'll have later tonight, as well as the Everydayer Club here on Locked On Ravens for some extra add-on content. We have a lot going on Locked On Ravens all year round. But let's talk about Lamar Jackson having some questions about him silenced by Declan Doyle, because there were a lot of conversations, particularly coming out of Declan Doyle's lounge interview yesterday, about, how often does Declan and Lamar talk where he said that the conversation and dialogue has been limited. He said that on the lounge interview. And so he was asked, first question was for Declan during this thing. And he was asked about how many times have you spoken with Lamar, Declan? And the answer was been able to speak to Lamar a few times, but he went into detail about one of them being through the interview process and that they sat for, he said, over an hour on a Zoom call when he was down in Florida, and they talked about a ton of different things, but going through his time in the past year and Lamar's vision for what he needs to be able to operate at the highest level. And what Declan wanted to see is, again, it's a two-way street. What Declan said is that he wanted to see if they were compatible and if that was a fit, and to look at kind of what the coaching structure was going to look like. And he also has had a chance to visit with them a few more times since then. They've exchanged some texts and, continued over the course of the press conference to say how excited he was to work with Lamar and the hunger that Lamar has to learn and to grow. He senses that through the conversations that they've had, the growth mindset. And again, that's for a guy who is a 2-time MVP, should be 3-time MVP. But again, like, Lamar is hungry to win. We know, and that's 1,000% correct. Of like, Lamar's a competitor. He's a super competitor. I think he's one of the most competitive players in the entire NFL. And so, it was all these questions about, oh, well, that's not good. The conversations have been limited. Oh, that's not great. And then today during the press conference, Declan Doyle was like, while it's been a few times, I think it eased a lot of people's minds that were kind of throwing those questions out there about, oh, well, they haven't talked a lot. That's not good. I never thought it was a big deal there. Some things with Lamar get blown out of proportion in terms of like, okay, where's this conversation about a couple of other quarterbacks? And this was one of them where I'm like, why are we making this a big deal? And lo and behold, look, it's not a big deal. They talked a lot. This is the off season. I think it's okay. Declan and Lamar don't have to be calling each other for 2 hours on FaceTime or whatever every single day. It is okay. They don't have to do that. I think the conversations they've had, at least from what Declan said here, feel like they've been very productive based off what Declan said. And so I'm really pumped for Lamar to be in this offense, to continue to grow within that. And again, just to see this next evolution of Lamar Jackson. And look, Declan and Lamar are going to be working very closely. Obviously, a lot of people have questions about Declan's age, and he acknowledged that both on the lounge and on his during the press conference today, where, he's confident in his experience and in the things he's been able to do. And, he said on the lounge interview that, like, that's something with the players that, sometimes it's a benefit to kind of be closer to them in age at certain points. So I think Declan's going to be a great addition to this staff. Obviously, there is a risk in terms of the non-play calling part of it, but he's a guy that, you can tell, like, the reason that he took this job, and it's part of what he literally said in the press conference, is that, it's the opportunity for him to kind of have the final say, call the plays, be a part of that more, where in Chicago, it wasn't a bad situation for him. It was good. But obviously, Baltimore offered some different things that attracted him to the job, and I'm really excited to see what Declan does over the course of this year with Lamar, with Derrick Henry, with Zay Flowers, and again, with the personnel. Like, the personnel decisions are going to be huge, like what we talked about in the first part of the show. Does Declan want Charlie Kolar back in the building? I would personally. I'd also want Isaiah back, but, you can only have so much. But what about the O-line? How does he see that? Talking about the receivers, does he want that big-bodied guy in the building? I'm sure he does, and that's something Eric DeCosta's talked about as well. So lots of big decisions ahead for this Baltimore Ravens team. That's all I have here today, though, on this PM edition. Locked on Ravens PM, Locked on Ravens checking again. Still trying to figure out the name, but thanks so much for being here. We'll be back soon with the Locked on Ravens squad show. Myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. Again, that's live Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, but we'll also be back with our regularly scheduled programming tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So be sure to stay tuned, like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked on Ravens.